Hey guys, Break here. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite characters in Fangs, Zoey and Boo. She's a ranged healer who brings consistent healing and huge CC to the table. She is, in my opinion, one of the best characters in Fangs right now. In this video, I'll run through her abilities and some general information about them. Her best augments and a few builds, useful ability cycles, positioning to keep in mind, as well as her matchups. For ease of access, the video is broken up into those various sections with timestamps in the description. Before we can get into the more complicated aspects of Zoey, let's first talk about her abilities and what makes her so powerful. First off, we have her passive, Cat Latch. Whenever Zoey heals or deals damage, Boo will latch onto that enemy or ally. Additionally, whenever Zoey heals an ally, she heals 40% of the amount healed. Zoey's passive is probably one of her more obvious abilities in terms of utility. Whenever she heals an ally, it also heals herself. Simple enough. In terms of enemy interaction, Cat Latch synergizes with her space and R. Whenever Zoey uses space, Boo will also fire a projectile from his location, allowing some nifty pokes around the corner or beyond her usual range, which can stop enemies channeling health relics or shards. I'll talk more about this later on, but Zoey's R is targeted based on where Boo is. Because of this, Boo's positioning can be one of the most important things to track while playing Zoey. Landing Boo on a low health captain and hitting them with your ultimate can win you rounds. Same goes for peeling a dive off your teammates with it. A good ultimate will win you clutch moments, and it's all based off Zoey's passive and where Boo is at any time. There's also a more hidden mechanic with Boo where if he's attached to an enemy who is in the fog of war, Zoey can still actually see where Boo is, giving some information where the enemy is currently at. Zoey's LMB is Witch Ball. It reads, Zoey fires a magic bolt that deals 20 damage to enemies and heals allies for 6 HP per second for 2 seconds. Zoey's LMB is, to me, what sets her apart from other healing options in the game currently. Compare her to Ynnari. Ynnari lacks the consistent healing output that Zoey has due to her LMB. In between fights, this allows Zoey to top off allies while saving other crucial big abilities for the fight. Again, keep in mind Zoey's LMB is what sends Boo to targets, so if you're looking to set up big brain plays, keep this in mind when choosing who to hit. It's a decent poke tool to contest shards, but generally you want to use it to heal allies unless you're setting up an ultimate. Zoey's RMB is Shield of Hope. It reads, Zoey throws out an ethereal Aegis that returns to her at the end of its range. If the Aegis passes through an ally, they are granted 75 shield for 3 seconds. Allies hit twice by the Aegis are granted an additional 75 shield for 3 seconds. Zoey's RMB is a great tool overall. It will always hit her twice, meaning it's a guaranteed 150 shield on a 10-second cooldown. This can give Zoey some much needed time to back up or receive peel from her teammates. Additionally, if your teammates are positioned in a line, it can provide them some time to secure kills or prolong the fight to get their own key cooldowns up. It's relatively straightforward as it just fires in a line and then returns. The biggest advice I could give here is just make sure to be constantly using it. One of the great things about Fangs is there is no mana system. If your frontline is engaging, feel free to use it. As long as you save your shift, Zoey can pretty freely use her other tools to support her teammates when positioned correctly. Zoey's RMB can go through walls. This is great for tossing a shield to a teammate who is otherwise in an unreachable place without needing to entirely reposition to get there. Zoey's shift is Bell Blare. It reads, Zoey's bell releases a sonic charm that pushes back all enemies around her. Probably her most important ability, it's the key to peeling herself. It's a great get off me tool, and combining with the stun her E provides allows Zoey to evade most dive attempts in uncoordinated play when combined with proper positioning. It's important to note that her shift will push the enemy the same distance regardless how close the enemy is to Zoey, so using it as far away from your enemy as possible is most optimal. Take a look here, for example. You can see the difference is pretty noticeable, giving her that much needed space to escape. Zoey's space is Duo Blast. It reads, Zoey and Boo each shoot out a blast of ethereal energy at the same time. Each blast deals 50 damage and slows enemies 35% for 5 seconds. Depending on if you take augments for it or not, this is likely the least important skill that Zoey has when it comes to playing her role as healer. It can provide some soft CC, but overall her other abilities tend to take priority. If your teammates are not in immediate danger or the enemy is retreating, This is great to use as further poke. It does, however, provide Zoey some ability to duel out targets who she is trying to contest 1v1. If you're stalling to prevent a back cap, having Boo attached to the enemy prevents the enemy from zoning her out to cap. Rowan's wall, for example, can be a big threat. If Boo is attached, her space will automatically hit the target. This also removes any threat of travel time being too great to contest the capture. Zoey's E is Spirit Scratch. It reads, Zoey channels Boo's power, clawing a spiritual scratch in front of her, dealing 65 damage and stunning enemies for 0.9 seconds. Zoey's best tool overall. The amount of value that Zoey can get with this ability is insane. It can stun entire enemy teams, combo with her ultimate for a 2-second stun, and set up all sorts of big plays from your team, coordinated or otherwise. I'd say this is likely her top priority ability in terms of what to use at any point, even above her healing. The stun will usually provide value that rivals a well-placed Rayo's RMB, Yonari's empowered RMB, or a sheer space, and it can be used consistently on a 10-second cooldown. Same as Zoey's RMB, it's also worth noting that Zoey's E can go through walls. This can be useful for safely poking at enemies and providing utility to your teammates who are in fights without having to throw away, positioning, or otherwise commit. Zoey's R is Feline Attraction. It reads, Zoey and Boo attune their spiritual bond, opening a gravity vortex around Boo. The vortex sucks in enemies, knocking them up for 1 second and dealing 120 damage. As mentioned before, this ability is targeted based on where Boo is, meaning you can target yourself, your allies, or your enemies. It's important to keep this in mind. I know I've used it way too many times on myself, or I accidentally healed an ally in my backline and used it on them when I thought it would confirm a kill elsewhere. This ability is one of the better in the game, in my opinion. It's easy to time AoE hard CC knockup and can catch retreating enemies or clustered groups by surprise. Combining it with the healing augment, and it can turn the tide of any battle. During the knockup, Zoey can also shield her allies, set her E stun, or disengage if needed. When it comes to builds, as is the case with every character in Fangs, realistically your creativity is the limit when it comes to what can and cannot work with a character. That said, I'll outline my favorite builds that I've had the most success with when playing Zoey and Boo. For the sake of time, I'm not going to break down the specifics of what each augment does, but I will put them on the screen for you to pause and read. My main build usually runs Vigor Cloak, Clawing Ring, Spectral Collar, Bloom's Brew, Mentor's Locket, and Rejuvenate. For captain rounds, I like to include Health Charm and Anointed Sprites. So breaking down this build, first off, if you're looking for the easy answer about which artifact to take, it's always going to be Vigor Cloak. Providing an additional 20% healing and shielding is amazing for Zoey, and it's just raw bonus stats. This also works with her passive and increases the healing Zoey receives herself. I'm a big fan of attack speed buffs, so I have a soft spot for Clawing Ring in my builds. It also increases Zoey's healing output and gives a flat heal to her LMB. This does mean that you have to be a bit better at hitting your LMBs since they fire faster, so if you're not comfortable with aiming yet, this can be swapped out for Scratch Charm. It's a very simple augment that I'm not super fond of, but I think for newer players it can be valuable since it adds more threat to your shift while keeping your LMB from feeling overwhelming. Spectral Collar is one of the augments I feel you have to take on Zoey. It's so incredibly good, even if you're new to Zoey or Fangs in general. Just take it. It adds more utility and peel to an ability that is already amazing. If you're positioned well during a fight, you can get the stun from Zoey's E and also heal your teammates for a nice chunk. Although it doesn't provide Zoey any healing directly, it keeps your frontline healthy and is simple to understand. Bloom's Brew is a great core augment to run in this build because it provides additional value when you're down in a fight. As the fight continues to bleed on and health pools take hits, Bloom's Brew can add the extra value to keep your front line alive longer than the enemies. I also sometimes swap out Bloom's Brew for Curing Herb Pouch if my teammates are taking a lot of damage and the enemy isn't diving me as much, or my team is peeling very well. It gives a flat additional boost on her space instead of the wide spread that Bloom's Brew provides. Additionally, Mischievous Tomb can slot in well to this build in place of Bloom's Brew if you're looking to play more aggressively and counter the enemy Zoey or just enemy healing in general. Lastly, for non-captain rounds, Mentor's Locket is simply the best option to me. It's a 200 HP AoE heal. What's not to love about that? It can be used as a burst heal option for your teammates when they're clumped, or self-peel when you're being dove, giving you the extra heal needed to get out of a sticky situation. For captain rounds, Health Charm simply provides a nice flat heal over time to keep you from having to play scared. It allows a bit more confidence with your positioning so you can play up to help allies chase kills. That said, if you're less selfish than I am, running Therapeutic Totem in place of Health Charm is also viable on captain rounds to heal targets other than yourself. Alongside Health Charm, I feel Anointed Sprites is amazing. It saves Zoe from being burst by things like Estrada's ultimate combo, Fjorn and Etherin dives, Brutus Hook R&B, or Balroth CC chains. It's generally a very flexible option that functions as a get-out-of-jail-free card. Now, if you're looking for something a bit more spicy, I've also got you covered. My meme build consists of Aegis Breaker, Lily's Talisman, Friend Mender, Binding Witch Hat, Mentor's Locket, and Venom. Throw in Phantom Mice and Swift Fruit on captain rounds and you're all set to unleash some truly dark tech on the arena. Swap Binding Witch Hat with Mischievous Tomb if they dare bring healing to try and contest you. Because the nature of these augments, this is a much harder build to get value with. A lot of the augments are more complicated, and this encourages a lot more aggressive playstyle for Zoe, which will likely be more difficult to succeed with than her traditional and safer play. Aegis Breaker is fun to combine with Friend Mender and Binding Witch Hat to try and gimmick your cooldowns up more quickly. This can work well with your E to increase the amount of CC you output, and it also provides anti-heal to synergize with Mischievous Tomb if you pick that instead. Lily's Talisman encourages using your LMB aggressively. It essentially empowers your next LMB used on an ally. This suggests a playstyle where you weave enemy hits with your ally heals to maximize value of your LMB. This can be tricky to pull off, but it can synergize well with Friend Mender and Binding Witch Hat. Friend Mender is probably the most hotly debated augment in the game right now. It replaces Zoe's LMB hot for a flat 15 healing, and also makes her LMB pierce. This is the DPS augment for Zoe. It means you can hit enemies through your allies while continuing to provide them with healing. It does add some slight bursts to her healing in exchange for taking away all healing over time. It's a fun augment, especially when combined with the others in this build. Binding Witch Hat is probably the best traditional augment in this build. It adds maximum HP to your allies, which is very useful to stack on your tank. It slots very elegantly into this build, adding both a nice damage buff and makes your tanks feel better about your constant DPSing. Mentor's Locket is still just run with this build. I feel it's so much better than the other options that it's just a must take for the same reasons I mentioned earlier. Lastly, the boon slot is kind of flexible for whatever you'd like. I've always been a big fan of Venom, so that's what I like to run. It adds disruption and can be extremely potent on maps like Stormheart where you can Venom the chokes. There's also a Relic Runner build that Gwynsu likes if you want some even deeper dark tech. Because Zoe has no traditional mobility like many other characters, she doesn't really care if you get grounded from holding the shards for too long. Taking advantage of this, she can slot in Swift Runner for a flat 20% movement speed buff. This is great to kite out enemies, but it also will put a target on your back since you'll be holding the shard. There is some merit to this, especially if the enemies continuously are capping against you. It can deny them their build and force them to engage into your comp. This can possibly tip the scale in your team's favor if you're built heavily to engage on the Phoenix with characters like Tufts or Belroth. Additionally, sometimes it is just good to contest the relic as Zoe, pick it up, for example if they're trying to backcap and you get there first, or just deny them the space in general. You could also run Mask of Glory either in your flex spot or during your captain round if you want to threaten a real scary surprise to the enemies. There's not much more really to say about this build other than it's very funny when you backcap as Zoe. That alone honestly makes this worth trying now and then just for the surprise and the mystery of what just happened, so I would definitely recommend trying this one out. There is a certain generalization you can make about Zoe's abilities and the way they can be prioritized. Zoe should always be LMBing when not casting other abilities. Even if your team is at full HP, the dot will still apply. This means that if they take damage shortly after, the dot will begin to tick before you reapply another LMB. Be aware that enemies can block Zoe's LMB to eat potential healing, but so can your allies. Healing the proper target is key to maximizing value. Try to maximize the range you cast your LMBs at to increase the safety of your position and provide the most opportunity to reposition to other teammates if they're still in need elsewhere on the map. The way I think about it is you always want to use RMB when it's up and your teammates can take damage. The shield lasts for 3 seconds, so this can provide your frontline more confidence to engage and generally create space by backing off enemies or buying time to provide further healing. If a fight has already begun, your E is always your most important ability. Using it on cooldown and aiming it for maximum value, especially with Spectral Collar, will yield huge results. As I mentioned earlier, your E will buy your team time to do whatever they need. Additionally, in dive attempts combined with Zoey's shift, it allows you to juke out enemies. Zoey's space is her lowest priority ability. It's useful for additional damage, and I do recommend using it when possible, but it's more a tool to secure damage and further a lead within a fight as opposed to her other abilities that can keep your team engaged and get the fight to a point where her space can be used. It's very important to learn when to weave it into a fight as a result of this. There may be small advantage moments where Zoey's space can secure the lead in an engagement when an enemy is trying to escape due to the slow that accompanies it. Zoey's shift is a bit more tricky to time correctly. There will be times when you get dove and there's not really much you can do if the enemy is dumping ultimates on you. That said, try using your shift to maximize the range created. If this is not an option, use your E first to stun them, then use your shift to push them away while you backpedal to safer positioning. If you're caught totally out and there's no teammates around, you can try to kite around a corner or bush to throw off their targeting. There have been many times I've outplayed enemies by dipping in and out of Fog of War and hitting them with space, shift, and E cast to stall out until an ally comes, using the massive 150 shield from her RMB to stall. Zoey's R is a great CC tool. It can be used to set up combos with your E and space, and you will find yourself getting huge value if the enemy is grouped together. Use it on a captain, save yourself from a dive, or on a high value target like a shard runner to swing fights. When using it on yourself, you can use E and then shift to create space. If you're running Rejuvenate on your passive, I like to pop it early when the enemy starts pushing so I can focus on applying CC to peel them off my front line and prevent our positioning from slipping. Of course, Rejuvenate only has a small radius, but I find it's okay to get that initial AoE heal from it, even if that means you miss out on the full value from it. When it comes to positioning, there's a few things you can do as Zoey. Generally, I like to sit on the aspect when possible, maintaining a neutral position. This allows you to react to plays happening around you. You can either walk forward to push or drop back to stop backups. If your team has multiple frontline characters or your range is playing up, you want to stand off to the side of your team, forming a triangle. This allows Zoey to pick her targets for healing more easily without worrying about her heals getting eaten unintentionally. As the enemy pushes forward on the aspect, drop back as far as possible while still maintaining center positioning, trying to maximize the range of your LMBs. If you see an enemy's space towards you or begin walking towards you, use shift early to maximize the space created, like I showed earlier in the video. If the enemy is diving you from the bottom, try to rotate upward, doing your best to maintain a triangle position as you move so your front line can reposition to punish the dive. Be careful not to accidentally overextend here, as this will be the highest threat moments in your positioning. When it comes to map specific positioning, there's a few things to keep in mind. On Embersong, playing near the short wall is crucial to maintaining a power position. Zoey can shoot through the wall or dip back behind it to hold her current position while also playing incredibly safe. On Stormheart, Zoey can sit near the choke. And lastly, on Crown Watch, Zoey can take very powerful triangle positioning due to how wide the map is. It can be a bit tricky to explain without proper visuals, so beyond that, I'll do a brief VOD round review of Crown Watch and Stormheart to try and showcase the play a bit better. Alright, so we are on Crown Watch, and you can see that I'm obviously playing Zoey with the Brutus, Estrada, and Fjord. Now this is solo queue, but I do believe these three players are 3-stacked in this. And I'm playing against a Rose, Kiona, Tufts, and also Fjord. So something to note about Crown Watch is that Zoey can take very powerful triangle positioning due to how wide open this center area is. Now this round is only about 16 seconds in, so we'll take it from here. I just sort of skipped to where the fight actually would start. You can see though I'm already sort of positioning to be in a triangle. You can see the Fiorin is here, Estrada is up here, and there I am making a triangle. So as the fight gets underway, you can see I'm backing up as they're pushing in. So as I mentioned, as they start to take space and my front line dips back, I also dip back with them. This is gonna happen pretty fast, so maybe I should actually slow it down a little bit here. But yeah, Fiorin took some damage, so I just start healing her a little bit. And then we have to hit the re-engage here. So Fiorin went in, took a lot of damage, but ultimately she's okay. Again, you can see I have this triangle here. Brutus just jumped in, but I'm playing back while still maintaining range to do my healing. So I'm healing Estrada, I'm healing Fiorin. Brutus goes in. Hit her with one last heal. Brutus did manage to get out. Fiorin secures the kill, and you can see I'm just sort of doing healing. I get the stun and push away as I mentioned on Tufts. You can see that again. Now Fiorin secures the kill, and then we push up again, having a triangle because I walked forward to give her some assistance with the kill here without overextending or staying behind my Brutus. I could push up. I know that I had this space because the Estrada's up here. Now you do see on the minimap Fiorin's pushing up, but I am kind of in a pretty safe position. I could dip back down if I had to. And now I stun the Tufts, push him away, and he's out. So now he's going to be engaging on my front line again, and I've successfully disengaged from the Tufts' attempt to get on me. You can see that while this Rose is trying to pepper me with shots, I'm still just focusing healing on Brutus. I'm not too worried about the Rose hitting me. I'm kind of trying to kite out her swords here. You can see them on the ground. There's only 2 behind me here, so it's really not going to be that much damage. She was focusing most of her shots on Brutus, so I'm not super concerned. That said, Brutus does hook her in, gets the RMB, so I will follow up with an E of my own and then just secure some damage using my other abilities, and that's a clean kill there. So now the dive attempt is on Kiona. I am kind of pushing up here, but it should be okay because I know that we're up a kill and now we're up 2 kills. Brutus chased down here on the bottom and scared the Fiorin off over the wall. So these are the only 2 enemies alive right now, so this is okay to be positioned so aggressively. I know that Fiorin is probably okay, but she probably wants to commit more here, so it's good to push up. She just got the kill, so let's see. Give her some shield, give her some healing with my E, even though I missed the stun, and then I reposition again back to this triangle, even though Estrada just dipped back. Okay, so Brutus is engaged here. He's trying to get out. He should be okay because, yeah, he just spaces out. It's fine. Estrada is a bit in, but I really don't see the threat. So that's actually really big there. So Brutus did the R&B, and then I stunned follow-up. So we can probably kill this captain here if I had to guess. Okay, he ults. I hit him with the ultimate myself, and yeah, he's just so in here. All 3 of us are right here hitting him with shots. He gets ulted by the Fiorin, and that should just clean up the kill. Oh, Fiorin got sent away, and he actually got out. No, okay, Brutus got the kill there. Nice. Okay, so looking at this positioning here, I believe that the Fiorin just died up there. So it's only this Rose left, and if this hook hits, the round should just be over. Yeah, it did hit, and again, just use my abilities, use my E, use my space. Because we are up so far ahead at this point, it's fine to just use space because that Rose isn't going to suddenly miracle kill both of us from full health. She has to do setup, obviously, just knowing Rose and what she can do. So I know that the damage is probably not going to be that great, so I would rather do damage to her, clean up the kill fast, and end the round. And then after I do the damage, I hit her with the E just to lock this down. And there you go. That round has been cleaned up very nicely. All right, so this is the 3rd round of a Stormheart game. I'm actually 4 stacked here, and I believe I'm playing against the 3 stack from Crown Watch. And so we're on the 3rd round. They actually took a round, we took a round also, and now I'm Zoey captain. So I think this is really interesting to showcase because this is probably Zoey's weakest map, and I'm also captain, so I'm likely going to be getting dove more. You can see the Fiorin already playing in our backline, probably trying to dive me here. And all I have is my Estrada here. I think Brutus just died. Yeah, so this is likely high time for them to try and dive me. You can see my Fiorin playing down in the corner here, trying to come up and get a flank of her own. Their Kiona is captain though, so that's gonna be rough to do. Now I'm actually really, I don't know why they tried to dive Estrada there, but really the Fiorin should have gone for me. However, this is a really big pinch here because now my Fiorin is getting in and they're stuck at the choke. So even though Estrada was getting dove and just used her space, she dove into this choke here where I can sort of try and body block and save while also doing damage and healing to the choke here. So you can see that the Fiorin's continuing to try and do this, but because the choke, I'm able to pinch off and provide healing to the Estrada while also peeling out the rest of the fight that's going on. So the Fiorin's kill is secured, and again, the fight is rotating through the choke here, which is generally pretty favorable because we had the strong positioning here anyway. So they're trying to shuffle through the choke here while the pinch is continuing to push through the choke, and myself and Estrada are on the other side cleaning up the kills from the other front line. So you can see these kills just come in pretty cleanly, and all that's left is the Estrada. I'm not too worried about that. I'm just going to heal up my Estrada a little bit also, and then come back to neutral positioning. So I will also add that we are running Battle Prism, so you're going to see us not pushing the Phoenix at all because we're trying to leverage that. So especially if you're playing in a 4-stack or 3-stack or whatever, it's really good to run Battle Prism because people will sort of just push the Phoenix without realizing it. So you can really leverage Battle Prism because it's only pushed a tiny bit, but we get the full advantage of the buff. And since we're coordinated, no one's going to step on that Phoenix. The only time we're stepping on it is to push it back so it's not all the way in our base, which I'll do here and there during this game. But generally you want to keep it as close to middle as possible while it's still on your side to capitalize on that buff. Now it can be said that you have to be careful, especially on this map, because that does deny you a lot of positioning and walking space in the center of the map. However, that's kind of why you want to keep it on your side but not right at the middle, so that if you need to walk through or you need to contest or whatever, it is still sort of has space for you to push it back towards your enemies without losing the buff entirely. Moving into this next fight, you can see that we are coming from behind here on the flank, myself and Brutus, while my Fjorn is in the front line here. So we're going to clean up this kill on the Brutus because he is out by himself. The Estrada can't really peel that at all. Going to provide some healing to the Fjorn really quickly and then go back to try and clean up kills. So this is a big ult on the two of them. The Estrada is pretty much dead here. She can't really get out. Or she does, but the Fjorn took a lot of damage from our Fjorn, so we clean that up and then clean up the Estrada. And then lastly, their captain is stuck behind us here, so we can just clean up the captain. Moving forward, you can see I've got some triangle positioning here. I'm going to grab the relic because they were trying to relic run, so this can just deny the relic. As I've mentioned, Zoey has no movement, so she doesn't really suffer from being grounded, so I'm kind of confident that it's okay if I just pick it up here to deny them the ability to backcap or do some craziness. So I set up the ult on the Brutus, and then Fjorn tries to dive me. I can disengage using my shift. My Fjorn successfully peels for me, and I'm just trying to play back here. You can see she ults me, but it's kind of okay. I pop heal pulse just to keep myself alive and push her away. Just stalling with my RMB and just kind of trying to kite her out. As I mentioned, use the walls as possible. I get the stun here, and the Phoenix is being pushed, so try not to stall. And unfortunately, you can only stall for so long. But I did manage to keep the Phoenix alive, and it is pushed on our side again, so we do get the advantage of Battle Prism. And now coming back, I am gonna help clean up the last of the kills here. Kiana's on her last life, and we just clean up that kill. When it comes to matchups for Zoey, it can be pretty comp dependent, so I did a bit of generalization here for the sake of simplicity. It runs from +2, which is most favorable for Zoey, to -2, which is least favorable for Zoey. In the +2 category is Kiana and Somnia. Both of them lack mobility, making it hard for them to land on Zoey. Zoey also does well into Kiana's space due to the predictability of it. The only thing to watch out for is Kiana's pull, but this generally can be avoided from my experience or countered with Zoey's shift to get away. For Somnia, Zoey can out-heal her insane poke, helping to bring her in line, generally neutralizing her effectively on any map other than Stormheart. In the +1 category is Rayo, Brutus, and Belroth. Good positioning can allow you to get away with a lot against these characters. Having enough space to dodge Brutus hooks can invalidate his attempts at landing on you. Rayo can have difficulty getting to Zoey due to how much he has to commit initially to get there. And lastly, Belroth is sort of just weak right now. He can be lethal when he lands on Zoey, but your teammates having courage just shuts him down so hard. Combine that with Zoey's CC, and Belroth really isn't an issue. In the neutral or 0 category, there are a few. Zoey, obviously, because she's Zoey also. Ynnari can be tough with her high damage poke potential. You need to be careful not to clump with your front line to avoid big AoE damage from Ynnari, but otherwise it's pretty even. Rowan's walls can hurt to cut off your healing, but RMB and E will still go through it. As for Rose, similar to Somnia, Zoey can generally heal through a lot of the poke Rose does. You just have to be careful of the swords on the ground as they can deal huge damage to Zoey's low health pool. In the -1 category, we have Tufts, Ethrin, and Estrada. Tufts and Ethrin occupy similar space in regard to the Zoey matchup. They can eat and reflect her projectiles, making it so you need to play more aware. They can also space onto her, which can sometimes overwhelm Zoey if her shift is off of cooldown, or it might not be enough to get them off you in the first place. Estrada can be a real threat because she can burst you with her ultimate combo without getting in range, where Zoey can respond with shift. Combine that with the stuns that Estrada puts out, and Zoey can end up dead before she has a chance to respond or reposition at all. If you're really struggling against Estrada dives, running Cleanse can help equalize. And finally, in the -2 category, the two assassin characters Ishir and Fjorn. They both do exceptionally well not only at getting to Zoey but also sticking on her. Fjorn's multiple dashes make it hopeless for Zoey when it comes to pushing her away with shift. Fjorn can, and will, appear in your backline and erase Zoey before you know what's happened if you don't pay attention to her and react ahead of time. The same goes goes for his shear. He has multiple tools to stick to Zoey, and if you hit his counter, it can all be over for you. Combine that with his stealth, and you have even less time than with Fjorn to prepare for his dive attempts. Alright, that's pretty much all I have to say about Zoey for now. She's a really great character overall, and I hope that this is helpful to anyone out there struggling with her. If you have any questions about Zoey or Fangs in general, feel free to join the official Fangs Discord at discord.gg/Fangs. Myself and other members of Hidden Leaf Games are pretty active there, as well as lots of amazing players who are all very helpful. Take care, guys. Bye.